What's up, people? I am back for another video. Today, never mind. Today, I am gonna, like I mentioned yesterday, today we're gonna be doing the state of DC or Marvel. Tomorrow, I'm gonna do DC, but today I'm doing the state of Marvel and as a brand. And it's not even just gonna be movies. Like, mainly it's gonna be movies, but I will mention like games. I'm probably gonna start off with the movies though, and then we'll go into the games and a little comics, but probably more movies and even a little bit of games and the shows. Because Marvel, I've always loved Marvel. Like I was always an X-Men guy, Spider-Man guy. Those are my characters. Even the Hulk as a kid. But this is kind of tied to what I was saying about superheroes. But I do like that now I can kind of split it and talk about these specific brands. The MCU started off really decently. Not everything was a hit in that first phase, because I'll be honest, like I didn't really like Iron Man 2. I think Iron Man 1's a good movie, but I feel like it's bogged down by a bad villain, even though I like Jeff Bridges. But still a really good movie. I feel like things changed really is as much as I love the first Guardians, I feel like you can say it was that movie where things changed. Because I feel like that was when everything needed to be in that tone. And I feel like there was a tonal shift after that. Because you had stuff like Winter Soldier that took itself seriously. These movies all had a different like tone. They weren't all just the same fucking movie. They didn't just do all the same jokes, the same story beats. They were like allowed to tell different stories. Like Thor 1 and 2 had more of a Shakespearean feel. The Incredible Hulk was just a really kind of just a kaiju fight, and also had like the Hulk, storyline. And then Iron Man, had, dealt with Tony and like military, like spending and all that. Like, all these movies dealt with different themes. They weren't all just the same, jokes, but it was like something switched. And then, like, we eventually, I think, with something like Winter Soldier, right? Also came out the same year as Guardians. That was a fucking spy thriller. And then obviously Guardians is like a space adventure. Like, all these movies had a different tone. Even the Avengers was like a big team up movie. That was like the only one that's kind of more in tone with not necessarily the current MCU, but like where things kind of started getting jokey. But it wasn't like that with every movie. And I still felt like largely the first Avengers still took itself seriously. I have my issues with the first Avengers. I don't think it's a perfect film. I kind of roll my eyes when people put it up there like the Dark Knights of the world and your Spider-Man 2s. I'll be honest, it's not that good. I think rewatching it, I still think there's some really good scenes though. And it's probably the only time Mark Ruffalo really was probably looked good as the Hulk, I would say, was in that movie. And but things changed after the first Guardians, because that's when, like, look what happened with Thor. They made Thor super jokey. Basically, it was like a Guardians movie. They played Immigrant Song. They played all these music that would basically be in a Guardians movie. Even like Avengers Ultron, that's when that's when all of a sudden every character had to be quippy, a bunch of even Civil War. Like, this is when I started really noticing that shift. Just everything had to be jokey and just nothing could be taken seriously. And they were doing this with like every fucking movie. It was really bothering me. Like, funny enough, the only movie that could kind of take itself seriously was even Guardians 2 at that time. Guardians 2 took itself far more seriously than Thor 3, which dealt with the apocalypse and the end of Asgard. And they treated it like a joke. I don't know why. I feel like this is where Marvel jumped the shark for me. I was off the train. I know everybody, and I'm gonna eventually get to the MCU stuff, but it's just I was off at the train at this point, and I feel like I was one of the few people saying it at the time because this was 2016, 2017, 2018, the height of MCU when everybody loved these movies. You really couldn't criticize them, or you're just either DC fanboy or just something like that. And I noticed something too. A lot of these movies, even like I didn't mind Doctor Strange, the first one, but I never had the urge to rewatch it, and that was the trend I was noticing. A lot of these movies, I was just watching because I was just kind of part of the journey, but none of these movies I really ever rewatched. I don't rewatch these movies, let's say, like a Deadpool or a Spider Man 2, or, I mean, even the first Tobey Maguire Spider Man, or even the first Guardians and Winter Soldier. Like, a lot of these movies I just watch once and then just move on. And that was something I noticed. And it helped. I think what helped too at the time, you still had Fox is still a separate entity, so you still had like X Men Origin, not Origins, fucking X Men Days of Future Past, and even First Class before that, and then Deadpool in 2016. Like I felt like they were hit, but then obviously, fortunately, Apocalypse also came out in 2016, so those kind of started going down a little bit. I feel like. Unfortunately, we thankfully still got Logan though. So Fox at least tried to keep the variety. They weren't obviously X-Men Apocalypse was dog shit, and I think they kind of fucked up with some of those X-Men movies, but I do feel like they were at least trying something unique. But because at the same time, this is when the MCU is getting very samey. Like, and it all culminates with Endgame or Infinity War first. Let's talk about Infinity War. Good movie, but I even said at the time it needs Endgame to be good, because I feel like Endgame is really gonna be the deciding factor if this is gonna be a really good movie or not. And like even like Ant-Man 2 had the still same jokey tone, and I think it didn't help that it came out after Endgame or Infinity War when he like I think I wouldn't mind the Ant-Man movies if once again if the MCU didn't go all jokey in every movie was like that, every character had to be doing super quips all the time. Nothing can be taken seriously. I wouldn't really have a problem. I mean, Ant-Man 2 is still bad on its own for different reasons, but I can accept like Ant-Man being a bit more on the comedy side, right? If if the other movies took themselves seriously, but unfortunately every other MCU movie was in that tone. So that's why at the time, I know some people don't like the Snyder movies, but reason I like those, and I know it's DC, but just quick DC talk. It was just something different at the time. It was like one of the few comic book films where it took itself, even some like Deadpool, which was a joke movie, still had more heart and took itself more seriously than some of this phase of the MCU outside of like Infinity War. And then we get to Captain Marvel. I didn't watch this one at the time because it just looked terrible, and I've never been a fan of Captain Marvel. I liked her as Miss Marvel, but I never liked the switch to Captain Marvel. I think it was just a boring look, and this was at that time when, we had to make her look less attractive because, we can't, desexualization, and that's when they started desexualizing women and shit. So that's why they got rid of the Miss Marvel look, which just looked better and looked more superhero-esque compared to the generic, like, jumpsuit or whatever the fuck she gets in the movie. But then, yeah, that happened, and then Marvel was like, oh, let's try to play with the identity politics, and even do shit like Black Panther and act like that was the first fucking black superhero movie and act like Blade didn't exist. And that's why that movie fundamentally pissed me off, just because of that. But and then the movie's just not good, and I'm being told it's good. But Marvel really, for me, I was already off. I just was like, let's just get to Endgame, and then I'm pretty much gonna be off the train. And I kind of really was after that. Here and there, I would see some movies like Endgame, because Endgame itself wasn't good. I'm gonna say it. Endgame was shit. I feel like there was good. The third act parts of it were good, but it is not a good movie. And it's like it's solid. That's why it's hard for me now to consider Infinity War a really good movie. If it was canon, if that was the canon ending, then yeah, it's the best movie made. But it's not. It's the fucking canon ending. It's not the ending. So we have Endgame, and unfortunately, Endgame's ruined things. And this is where it starts to fall off. And getting into games, the Marvel really started falling off too in the games. Well, Marvel could have had a nice comeback with the games, because I've been thinking this, like, even at the time when I was kind of getting over the MCU, I was like, if Marvel can get their shit right and get it right in the games, this could be the one thing that could really keep my interest in Marvel. But they didn't. Well, they had this first Spider-Man game. I know that's Sony technically, but I'm just talking about Marvel as a brand, so I'm going to count it. And we all know what happened with the second game, where they just dropped the ball, and they had a chance. Like, you could have had a really good Avengers game, which a lot of people wanted. They fucked that up. It's like Marvel. They seem like they're kind of coming back with the games a little bit. Like, they're doing more fighting games, but like, I want a straight up good story Marvel game, and I felt like Spider-Man. I thought at the time that this was gonna be like, oh, they got this right. Maybe we can get some more characters, and then they fucked it up with Spider-Man 2, and now I'm like, I don't trust Wolverine now, and I'm borderline, like, I do not want Insomniac touching any other characters after what I saw after Spider-Man 2. I'm like, I do not want them touching any other Marvel character. So it's like Marvel's fucked in the games too. It's like they don't know what to do in the games, and then the MCU decided, let's copy what they're doing in the comics, but the worst comics. We're gonna make Falcon Cap, which no one wants. Falcon Cap sucks. I've never liked it. I've not liked it in the comics, because I think it takes away. Falcon was one of the first few black characters in Marvel. I think he might have been the first black character, if not one of the early ones. Because it may have been, if not him, it was probably Black Panther. But he was one of the earliest black characters in Marvel. And you decided to take his agency because we had to make him the white character. And I've said it, I'm not even a fan of Bucky as Cap either. To me, Cap's Steve Rogers. And it just is. I don't know why Marvel didn't just reboot after Endgame. They had the perfect chance to just reboot after Endgame, have a fresh start, just recast Iron Man, recast Steve Rogers, recast Thor, and you can actually do it now, because now at this point they own Fox, which unfortunately I was never for. I didn't want them to have the X-Men, because I feel like they're not going to do the X-Men right. I mean, there's so many reasons I think they can fuck up the X-Men, because obviously we could talk about, like, the woke shit. Like, that was when that shit was coming in, and they were more focused on, we had to do identity politics, but that's part of it. But I also never wanted them to have the X-Men because of the tone of their movies. The X-Men's a thing that takes itself seriously. There's comedic moments in those movies, and you do have quippy, not movies, but even in the comics, I meant to say. But even, like, you have quippy characters, like, even Nightwing, Jesus fucking Christ. Nightcrawler, fucking A. Nightcrawler. Like, you have characters that are a little bit quippy, but most of the time they're taken seriously, and they take shit seriously when shit needs to be taken seriously. And I don't think the MCU can do it. I'm like, oh, what are we going to get? A Guardians of the X-Men movie? Is everybody just going to be quippy? Is Wolverine going to be quippy? That was when the MCU started getting bad. They made every character quippy. Even Thor, and like what they did to Thor. Look what they did to fucking Thor or the Hulk. They never, in my opinion, the MCU never got Spider-Man right. And I know that's some stuff with Sony, but I feel like Kevin Feige could have tried to pull some strings with Sony and maybe let us actually be able to do Spider-Man right, because they fucked it up. The Uncle Ben stuff, the no Uncle Ben, the fact he was Iron Boy, and I don't care. Oh, No Way Home, he becomes the Spider-Man we know. This should have been the entire. That should have been the entire trilogy. He didn't need Tony. I would have maybe been fine if Tony was in one movie, but realistically, it should have been all Peter. That's the other problem. They never want to put him by himself. It's always like a bunch of team ups, or they have to throw in a bunch of characters because they don't think. I honestly think the real reason is because I don't think they think Tom Holland's a star. I don't think they don't think he's like a name. I really believe they just don't think he can sell a movie on his own. Like, that's the only thing to me that makes sense, because how many times, like, okay, Far From No Way Home, I'll give it a pass, but why Far From Home? Even in the first one, it should have just been him. Tony could have been a quick cameo in the end of No Homecoming. Like, imagine if you cut out Tony Stark. You don't give. You don't have like Peter suit. Have the Tony stuff in it, like the Iron Man mode and all that bullshit. It's just a normal Spider-Man suit. I think. Let it be Peter growing on his own. Then you can throw Tony in the end, or you can even have it like he shows up one quick time earlier in the movie, but the rest of the movie is him on his own, and then he shows up in the very end. That's what should have happened. But it's just and then them wanting, and because the MCU not rebooting will never not make sense to me, because you could have, going back to this point, just recast Tony Stark, Steve Rogers, Thor, or if you want, you could easily keep Chris Hemsworth and do some multiverse thing where he's like the one carryover. And then now that they own the X-Men, they could have easily just had the X-Men actually just in the universe. Same with Fantastic Four. They could all just be in the universe now. You don't have to do some multiverse shit or convoluted reason that they're going to be able to exist in the MCU. You could have just rebooted. But no. Now they did movies like, they did Black Widow too late, and they didn't even do that right. They decided not to make that R-rated, which doesn't make any sense to me. You could have made that an R-rated, like a movie like, there's Point of No Return. I think that's like a perfect example of a movie if you've ever seen it. Bridget Fonda's in it. It is basically how you could do a Black Widow movie. It should have been R-rated, smaller scale. You didn't need a giant budget. You didn't need Yelena either. Or you do the Budapest story, and you could have made it a Black Widow. Black Widow's like the lead, but you could have Hawkeye be the co-star. I think that could have been a really good movie. And you make it either a really hard PG-13 or you make it R-rated. In Black Widow, you could just make like almost like not a full-on, but like kind of female Bond. Have a scene where she's at like a ball or some party, and she's in a nice dress trying to get intel. Like, you could do something like that. Look what they did to She-Hulk. That one's the one that pisses me off, because She-Hulk is such a good character. It doesn't help that they already fucked up the Hulk, so the dynamic between Hulk and She-Hulk doesn't matter, because Hulk's already ruined in the MCU. They have murdered that character, and I feel like they're partially burying the character just because they don't own it, because Universal does. So they're just like, fuck it, we're just gonna bury him in our movies. Because that's bullshit to me. Hulk, when I was coming up as a kid, it was Spider-Man, X-Men, was Wolverine / the X-Men at 2, and Hulk, to me, at that time, felt like a loose number three of the top three Marvel characters at the time. Because Hulk had the TV show, and then obviously had a couple of movies before like the main MCU really got started. Hulk felt like and then he had a couple of games. Like Hulk was mainstream a little bit, and then you just like do nothing with them in these movies. Even if you can't have them in a solo movie, do something with them in these team up movies. The fact that he was in an Iron Man suit in one of the movies in Infinity War, there should have been a scene where he broke out of the suit and hulked up. That's what I thought was going to happen in the movie, and we just never saw it. And apparently they were going to do that, and that's apparently recorded, and they have the footage. But they just cut it. So they never got Hulk right, and then they butchered She-Hulk, making it a super feminist show because of the time. And it was also not just a super feminist show. They had it go after essentially the people criticizing Marvel and the MCU at the time, because this is when things were getting a little woke. So they thought, hey, oh, you just hate it because woman, you know? Or Black Panther 2 was an abortion. They didn't want to recast T'Challa, which I've said it before. They should have recasted everybody. Because then, yeah, you could have recasted T'Challa in this new MCU. Do Marvel, and I think DC to an extent too, you treat these movies kind of like Bond when you just recast a different actor. It's in the same kind of universe, but it's essentially just a different actor. Do it like that. But maybe you change things up a little bit. It's in a different unit. It's in a different Marvel universe. It's not tied to the MCU, but it's like a new MCU. You could have easily, or you switch it and make it's a different Earth, but it's, with the same characters, just different actors. You could do something like that. You already have the multiverse, and that's the other problem. They start going really haywire with this multiverse shit, and they've turned people off. People are finally done with like the uber jokey superhero movies now. I feel like that's one thing I'm finally happy that people are calling out. I hate that it took this long. Like, this should have happened years ago. People should have called this type of the MCU humor, is what I call it, basically. That's unfortunately, I think, infected everything else. Infected DC, so that's another superhero thing that got infected with that. And not even just superhero movies. I feel like it branched and fucking spread to even other movies where you have to have that MCU style humor, where that's it's almost like a genre of its own now. And it's annoying. And I really wish people called it out back in like 2015, 2016, 2017. Because I was pointing it out and some other people were pointing it out. But it was like we were drowned out by, oh, it wasn't that big a deal. You guys just want everything to be dark. Everything needs to be a fucking joke. And it's stupid. And I wish people called it out then. Because that's truly what really, for me, killed the MCU. Yeah, the woke stuff did not help, and I think that was like the final nail, and it's basically chased everybody away. But I truly feel like the humor is what did it, because that was like the devil in the door they let in, or the wolf at the door, whatever you want to call it. They let it because they felt like, oh, we want to have everything be jokey, when that's not even how the comics are. There are certain characters that are a little bit more jokey, but when even something like Deadpool, where there's jokiness in it, but it still can take itself seriously at times, and there's heartfelt moments, you don't even have those anymore in these MCU movies. It's just insert shitty joke. None of the characters are even heroic anymore. There's no like call to power or call to like being a hero. You don't have any of that. A lot of the characters are just super insufferable now because they're all snarky. Everybody has to be super snarky like Tony Stark. Another thing that hurt Marvel that I haven't mentioned is the stupid shows where Bob Iger likes to claim, oh, well, this was all on Bob Chapek. But Kevin Feige had some fucking fault in this too. He saw Prestige TV was doing well, and he's like, oh, I want to try that with Marvel. But the problem was, I think, he did it too late. I think if you had did some of these MCU shows back around, like, let's say 2012, 2013, Not counting Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because that really wasn't connected. If they had something like on Netflix, they had Daredevil, but that was it. And they didn't even fully connect to it. And, well, at the time, they didn't have Disney Plus yet, right? But they overdid it with these shows. A bunch of shitty shows no one cares about. They sold you on, oh, you have to watch these shows that connect the movies. They don't. Half the fucking time, come to find out, the directors for some of these MCU products didn't even watch the fucking show. So they just kind of went their own direction that's not even tied to the show. So they don't even keep to their own shitty consistency timeline. Nothing makes sense. Everything's all over the place. I don't know. I I feel like Marvel just has damaged itself as a brand, man. And this is what contributes to superhero fatigue. And it's going to be more focused on Marvel because they were the ones that were super popular for long. And they have just. Look at what happened with Doctor Strange, too. You had so much potential, and you coming off No Way Home, which that was the only movie at that time that really made money. Because you got to remember that year, Black Widow came out, that bombed. Motherfuckers will try to act like, oh, Shang-Chi was a success. Why does no one talk about Shang-Chi years later? It also didn't do well. Eternals. Wait, who the fuck asked for Eternals? That was just like you just pulled something out of a fucking hat. You threw a dart at like a fucking board and it landed on fucking the Eternals. Because no one fucking ever talks about the Eternals. Unless you're like a super Marvel nerd. Well, that's because, oh, the people trying to defend the MCU at the time. Well, but the Guardians did well. They do not realize the reason truly Guardians did well was the cast. While, yes, it was a good movie, it was the cast that really did it. The dynamic of the cast, and I would really say a lot of it too, Chris Pratt too, some of it. But a lot of it was the dynamic of the cast, and the cast in general was just good. The cast in Eternals was just fucking not great. They had no chemistry. They were boring as fuck. They were visually boring. That was the other thing. Marvel movies started just looking very visually boring. And it's like weird. You'll get a once in a while, you'll get an okay Marvel movie like Spider-Man No Way Home, but I think a lot of that's carried by nostalgia. Let's be real. People don't want to admit it, but it was carried by nostalgia. I do think it's a solid movie. It is the only good Tom Holland movie, but it's not even carried by Tom Holland. It's because Toby, Andrew, Willem Dafoe's in it as the Green Goblin. But let's be real. You had to bring in another version, not even Tom Holland's own Green Goblin. So you have a Spider-Man be introduced to a Green Goblin that's not even his Green Goblin from a different timeline. So that also kind of irks me in that sense. But also, it just shows you how uninteresting they've made MCU Spider-Man. But that's the only thing that made money, and that's more just because of the nostalgia. And let's be real, same with Deadpool 3. I like Deadpool 3, but even then, I don't look at it as a full-on MCU movie. To me, that is more of a Fox movie. I look at that as like a love letter to the Fox universe, and it's more of an ending to that. I don't look at it as like, this is like a specifically MCU movie. And even Guardians 3, I don't count that because Guardians has always been in its own little corner, even in the first movie. They were always doing their own thing. They're not tied to the main MCU. The only time they came in with the main other MCU characters was Infinity War and Endgame. Outside of that, they have not interacted with the other characters. And then they did Guardians 3, which is their own little story. And even if the Guardians did return, they're probably not going to interact with the main MCU. It'll probably just be like their own story again. So they're in their own little corner almost. That's one of the reasons I think Guardians works, is because it's in its own separate universe. Not universe, but it's in its separate corner almost. And they bogged everything down with these shows. WandaVision. You did an Ironheart show no one fucking wanted. She-Hulk, once again, I think could have worked if you actually adapted She-Hulk and didn't make her a piece of shit and unlikable cunt. And it didn't, like, try to shit on your own audience. And if you actually made some of the fourth wall jokes funny. it could have worked, but nah. You have Ironheart. Like, who the fuck? Why are we doing Ironheart? Even characters like America Chavez, they try to bring in Doctor Strange. Like, these new characters that no one really liked. The Hawkeye show I heard wasn't too bad. Is like probably the least bad of those shows. But I'm still not a fan of Kate Bishop, and I never will be. They started leaning because they have to have, let's have girl versions of the male characters. When there was already other female characters they could easily use that are far more interesting. And, Fantastic Four is like probably the only decent thing that has come out from the MCU that's kind of tied to the MCU. But even in this movie, it's in its own little corner because it's in a different multiverse. But it's going to obviously tie in eventually, right? When we get to Doomsday, which I think will be just a disaster. I think Marvel has just turned off the general audience. The audience felt like they had to do homework watching these shitty shows that just go nowhere. People act like are really good in the beginning and then just go nowhere. Why are we doing an Agatha show, but we haven't done anything with like Ghost Rider, or you even fucked up the new Daredevil. You even fucked up bringing back Daredevil. You even fucked that up, Marvel. It's like, what the fuck? It's like, they just can't do anything right now. Why haven't we done anything with the X-Men? Why is it like the hold up with that? And thinking, we're just gonna rely on nostalgia. Like, Doomsday and Secret Wars are just gonna be just cameo fest. That's all they can do right now. They think cameo fest is just gonna be the only thing that can carry the movie. So, and in Marvel Comics, it didn't work in the comics. Trying to do all these replacement characters, eventually you just go back to the more traditional character anyway because it doesn't work. And unfortunately, they fucked up them doing what they did in the comics, trying it in the movies. I don't get that. They skipped so many actual good stories. Marvel could easily be a really good universe if they first go back to kind of what they did with Phase 1. And even, or like the Fox X-Men movies, or any of the older Marvel movies that are not even just like MCU. You go back to just doing, one, solo stories. Not everything has to be some big team up. Why? Like, why can't we just get a straight up one-off Punisher movie, or even a Daredevil movie? Daredevil, I kind of hate that he's been regulated to TV. As much as I love the Daredevil series, the one kind of negative aspect that I feel like comes with that is Daredevil's now seen as just a TV character now. I feel like MCU wouldn't even know what to do with a Daredevil movie because it's not reliant. And that's the other thing I haven't even mentioned. The fucking budgets for some of these movies too have been just going ballooned insane amounts. It's wild. The cost of these movies compared to even the ones from the initial start of the MCU. You're telling me, Marvel, if you're smart, you could do a Daredevil movie for like maybe $100 million, maybe a little bit over that, because Daredevil's very street level. He's just gonna be fighting thugs and shit. He's not gonna be fighting super beings. They're not gonna go to space. It's not gonna deal with like multiverse shit. And you're not going to have a lot of crazy special effects. It's going to be more just regular fighting. Even something like a Punisher movie. It's just going to be him killing kind of gangsters and criminals in the city. You can keep basic. Like, even the fact that MCU can't even get a Blade movie off the ground. Mahershala Ali did a whole fucking Jurassic World movie that was announced after he was already supposed to be playing Blade. Is wild to me. Blade's another one. Blade you could do for like $80-90 million. It's just him killing vampires in the city. Once again, no, he's not going to space. He's not going to be fighting super beings like a Thanos. There's not going to have a shitload of characters that's going to require a shitload of CGI and all this shit. It's just going to be them kind of him just killing vampires. I don't know why Marvel's so apprehensive. It's like this weird thing with Marvel now. where they feel like street level characters are only like they have to be regulated to TV. They think only street level characters. Oh, street level, we don't have to put a big budget. Okay, we just do that on a TV show. It's like, why, dude? If you're smart, Marvel, do a Daredevil movie, like an actual movie with Charlie Cox, so we can maybe have better looking swing scenes. Let's be honest. Some of the swing scenes, I love the show, but that was probably the weakest part. So imagine like a movie budget with actually a Daredevil movie. I don't know if they're hesitant because obviously the Daredevil movie with Ben Affleck, but it's 2000. That was 2003. That was by retards. I mean, I didn't hate the first Daredevil movie. I liked it for what it was, but that was still when they still fully didn't understand superhero movies. In the right hands, you could do a good Daredevil movie. Same with the Punisher movie. And actually, Punisher movies have been shown to do well, so I don't know. He's one I don't even get why he has to be regulated to a TV or like a special or something. And he's only way he's going to be in a movie is if it's because it's in a Spider-Man movie. Not because it's its own movie. It's a Spider-Man movie. And I even think Spider-Man should be super big budget either. Because he's another character that he's kind of street level. Yeah, he has powers and maybe you'll probably have to put a little bit of special fucking A. You have to do a little special effects with like the swinging scenes. But like, let's be honest here. He's doesn't require CGI because some of his villains are not CGI heavy. There's some villains that are just even Green Goblin. You can probably do a reasonable Green Goblin for not too expensive. Like, the only ones that might, even Electro, you might have to just do a little bit of, like, electricity effects and shit. But he's not, like, a villain that requires, like, a shitload of CGI or anything. And even the costume, you can make that look practical. You can give Electro a practical-looking costume, but you also have characters like Scorpion, which is just a dude with a giant tail. Or even Shocker, same thing. You would just have to get like electric special effects, but like there's some villains that don't require a lot of crazy effects. Even Vulture, you could try Vulture again. He doesn't have special effects. He's just a dude with wings. So like I feel like you could easily do like there's so many street level characters, and then you work your way up. You don't have to do these crazy budget movies anymore. Not everything has to be a colossal movie every fucking time. There's nothing wrong with the big colossal movie event movies. I get those costing a little bit more, but if Marvel's smart, you manage your budgets, you do more street level characters and stop regulating them the fucking movies or TV. That's the one thing I'll at least kind of give DC. They will still do certain street level characters in theaters. Not all of them, but they'll put some of them in the movies. Like obviously Batman's the most famous one, but they're doing a Clayface movie, and that's gonna be somewhat street level. Like even like if the Deathstroke and Bane movie, that's probably gonna be somewhat street level. It's not gonna be crazy budget. Like DC are at least more willing to sometimes do street level characters, or even something like Watchmen, where that's more street level. Or even a Suicide Squad, at least the first one, it was somewhat outside of the ending. That's like the only part that went crazy with the special effects, but some of it was just kind of street level. I feel like that's the problem with Marvel. They regulate street level stuff to the fucking TV, to their series. I don't know why they think that should only be for shows. And another thing they need to do, no more adapting these shitty swap characters. No one likes Ironheart. There's a reason that show fucking tanked. No one gives a fuck about Echo. Most people don't. So why even adapt her? Why do characters like America Chavez? No one cared. Funny enough, Doctor Strange 2 did well, but there's no... I bet you we're never going to see America Chavez again, so what was the fucking point? Why? There's so many characters you could focus on. Get back to doing different type of comic book movies. So you get your street level characters. Do some more space adventure type movies. Have your big event team up movies. Also, go back to more serious movies. If you have certain characters that you need to be jokey, fine, but let it be with a balance. One thing, I think the reason the first Avengers worked, Thor was still taking himself seriously. He wasn't jokey Thor. So you had that dynamic along when even Cap became super jokey when Cap should not really be a jokey character. And he should make, if he does make a joke out of like a couple, like he should only make like a one joke, and it should only be like, and it should be like kind of like above his, it kind of should be similar to Drax, where some things will go over his head, 'cause obviously he's a dude at a time, right? So it should be that type of humor, not like quippy fucking Tony Stark humor, because everybody has to be Tony Stark. It's just fucking annoying. It's, if they can fix that. But I don't know. I think superhero movies in general have just lost the audience, and Marvel's a big reason why, because they have just produced dog shit really the last 6 years. I mean, for me, it's been longer. I think the tone really shifted after Guardian, so I think it's been almost the last 10 years, or even a little bit over that. These movies just do not have staying power with me. Like, outside of like the first two phases, and even not every movie in those phases either. Some of those obviously will still have stay, like the first Iron Man, Winter Soldier, even the first Captain America. Um, I'll say the first Avengers, even I have my issues with it. Like those movies are gonna have Incredible Hulk are gonna have staying power with me, but a lot like post that, not counting like Deadpool 3, not counting Guardians 3 because that's part of a trilogy. Honestly, maybe Fantastic Four, but that's like 3 movies. Fantastic Four is like the only real one I can say that's not tied to anything. That's somewhat still tied to the main MCU. That has been good. Everything else has been shit. And it just doesn't help that they're so wishy-washy. Yeah, Marvel, they should have just rebooted and start fresh and take these characters seriously again. Stop letting everything does not have to be a goddamn joke. And unfortunately, that's infected everything, and because the MCU had to stick to it, and no one wanted to call it out back in 2015 or 2016. Like, I'm happy, like I said earlier, that people are calling it out finally, but I hate that it's taken this long to do it, because now it's too late. It's like the disease is already there. It's like you found the cancer too late. It's like spreading. It's already spread. Not even spreading, spread. Past nuts. So, I'm getting to 43 minutes here. I mean, I'll keep going a little bit. Because I do think that Marvel, it just sucks as a Marvel fan to see the state of it. Like, even in the games, if they were smart, if they didn't fuck up Spider-Man, and the Insomniac didn't fuck up Spider-Man 2, they had just did. But looking back, honestly, they kind of fucked up from the start. With one thing. Well, a couple things. But the one big thing. They introduced Miles too early. He never should have been in the first game. It didn't make any sense. Why is he already in the first game? Just so you can half-ass make it a co-op. It doesn't need to be a co-op. Not like, there are games where it makes sense to have co-op mode. I don't think a Spider-Man game, unless it's like a multiverse Spider-Man game where you can be 2 different versions of Spider-Man, like a Spider-Verse kind of game. That's different. But a mainline Peter Parker Spider-Man game should just be a single player. It's you playing as Spider-Man being Spider-Man. that's where everything went wrong. Because let's be real, from the jump, they wanted Miles to replace Peter. And they ended up fucking up Peter in the process. Peter wouldn't take a break. I don't care. Oh, well, what happened? No, Peter's went way worse in the comics, and he's not retired. The whole point of characters like Spider-Man, I'll even throw Batman in there, is they do not want this to happen to another child. That is why they took the mantle. Specifically Peter. He doesn't want another child to lose their uncle or even a parent. Same with, obviously, Batman. You know, he went through that, losing his parents. Why the fuck would they take a break? Unless, it's just stupid. Like, I get it. He's taking breaks in the comics because of serious shit. And he's, gone through way worse. And there's times he's gone through way worse and he's not retired or taking a break. No. Miles never should have been in the fucking game. Because to me, that solidified, looking back, after what they did with Spider-Man 2, they wanted Miles to be seen as the main Spider-Man for a little bit. I think that was always their intention. So now, if Insomniac never fucked up, we could have had a thriving kind of Marvel universe in a fucking video game. And we could have actually had good versions of these characters. So if the MCU's fucking up in the movies, I could have at least had some cool Marvel stuff going on in the games, and that could have at least had Marvel could have something. The only games they have is one game that's a fighting game that's coming out in Japan, or that's made from Japan, but it's basically just a fighting game. And then you got Marvel Rivals, but that's a shooter, and that's a kind of arena shooter. That's not a fucking normal Marvel thing, and there's no real story in it. So it's that doesn't count. So you don't really have anything. You have some decent one-off games, but I don't think Wolverine's gonna be good, I'll be honest with you. I think some of the kills might be cool, but I feel like the story's not gonna be there. I don't trust Insomniac anymore, and I don't even want them touching other characters after what they did with Spider-Man 2. So it's unfortunate. So they don't even have games. And the comics are just dead in the water. No one gives a fuck about Marvel as comics anymore. Marvel, and I even think DC at least, though I'm hearing some okay things about the Absolute stuff, I just don't like the aesthetic of it. I've not read it. Sorry, this is a little side DC point real quick. I've not read it, but I just don't like the aesthetic of it. It just does nothing for me. So, but at least DC kind of has something in the comics compared to Marvel. Marvel's just dead. No one gives a fuck about Marvel comics. So it's insane what they've done in the comics, but then they brought that in the movies, and now their movies are stagnated. The only movies people cared about is Deadpool 3, and that's nostalgia shit. People only kind of care about nostalgia shit. It seems like that's the only time people will care about these Marvel movies, if there's some big team up and it's some nostalgia shit. So, but, yeah, it's just disappointing what has happened to Marvel as a brand. They have been severely damaged. And, Disney doesn't have anybody to blame but themselves. There's not even decent Marvel shows. It'd be one thing if the movies suck, but you have decent shit. No, the shows all suck. Even, the What If show. It feels so dumb because you could have there's so many cool what if stories you could do. Even just randomly think of. No, they're it just feels like they're what if we just make this character, let's take this white character, what if he was black? Or what if this male character was a woman? It just seems like it was just an excuse for them to do a bunch of swaps. Race swaps or gender swaps and all that stupid shit. And then the story's just bad. And then they, for some fucking reason, decided to but do a Marvel zombie show, why? You're not even R-rated. That's the other thing that has killed Marvel, or at least specifically the movies. Their unwillingness to go R-rated. That's one of the reasons I think there's a hang-up about Blade. They're scared. They don't want to do an R-rated movie. I don't know why. They don't understand that certain characters are R-rated. No one's saying you gotta do an R-rated Avengers movie. You don't even need to do an R-rated Thor movie, but like an R-rated Blade, an R-rated like Punisher movie. Yeah, I think Daredevil. You could go either way. I would lean towards like a hard PG-13 because I don't think Daredevil needs to be super super R-rated. Unless the only time I would say maybe an R-rated Daredevil if it's like a team up with Punisher, but that's about it. Largely, yeah. So there's certain characters though that do like I think Ghost Rider. If you're gonna really do a Ghost Rider movie, has to be R-rated. So they just don't know what they're doing. So the hesitancy to be R-rated too, or do certain R-rated characters is just killing them. Like Marvel is just damaged as a brand. They got nothing going on right now. So, but I'm gonna probably wrap it up here since I'm approaching an hour. But yeah, it sucks what happened to Marvel, and I'm gonna blame Disney. And we don't even have Fox to at least if they were still around, we could still maybe get some decent X-Men movies. Maybe they weren't all hitters, but maybe we could get an occasional hit. We could probably hit I would as much as I like Deadpool 3, I still feel like if Fox was still around as a separate entity, I really feel like they would still have done a better Deadpool 3. Because I feel like as much as I like Deadpool 3, I wonder if with Fox, I feel like the jokes would have landed more. But yeah, so they're not around, and then Sony's just they're fucking retarded. They tried their like Morbius verse and shit. That was fucking terrible. So it's like nothing's good coming out of Marvel. Fantastic Four, I think, is gonna be like an outlier. I'm gonna be honest. I feel like it's gonna. It's the only like. It's out. It's wow. It's an outlier. It's gonna be the one in the rough, and then I feel like they're just gonna go back to shit because I don't think Doomsday is gonna be good, and I don't even think Secret Wars is gonna be good. I feel like they're just gonna hinge everything on the cameos. For me, that's not gonna matter. I mean, don't be wrong. It would be cool. Like they're gonna eventually have Hugh Jackman and Toby back, so to see a scene with them and maybe even have RDJ in there, that would be cool, right? To have those guys all on screen. But outside of that, that's just a moment. I feel like the script's gonna suck ass and it's gonna be shit. So that doesn't save the movie. So I feel like Fantastic Four is like the one thing we're gonna get that's decent, and then we're gonna go back to just shit and mediocrity. So, but yeah, guys, that's all I gotta say. The plan is tomorrow night, if not tomorrow night, Wednesday night, I'm gonna do my take on DC, the DC brand, and I am more of a DC guy, but I'm gonna be honest, I don't think they're in any of a better position than Marvel is. Unfortunately, we'll talk about the Snyder stuff a little bit too with that, and the only thing DC kind of maybe has over Marvel right now is maybe the comics, because at least people are talking about the absolute stuff, and even like the joke, not Bat Metal, but fuck, what was that character's name? Um, I'll look it up tomorrow, but there was another series of comics that people were talking about before that I feel like at least DC was kind of being talked about with their comics compared to Marvel. But DC is not in a better position. Their movies have all been shit. There haven't, in my mind, the last good DC movie was maybe the Snyder Cut, and that was a movie that technically should have came out in 2017. Like, I just feel like both companies, it just sucks that they're both going through a shit heap right now. So I'll be talking about that more tomorrow. Um, and subscribe to Pin Down Podcast. We should be live Saturday for our normal like live stream. And yeah, that's about it. But yeah, guys, I'll talk to y'all later. Oh, now I remember. I think it's Batman Who Laughs. That was another fucking DC story that people kind of talked about. All right, y'all. Talk to y'all later.